tool for our Good Together Marriage series. And today we're going to talk about a tool in relationship to our session on redemption. And we know that because of Jesus, we're not only reconciled to God and to ourselves, but also to one another. And so today our tool is about making a good repair. Christian relationships should be marked by making repair, by asking for and granting forgiveness. It should just be a normal part of our relationships with one another because we recognize this life in a fallen world, but we also recognize that Jesus has done the work to reconcile us not only to himself, but to one another. So first of all, just let's talk about some of this language that we use. So this language comes out of this language of repair. It comes out of attachment theory, where what we know is that each one of us needs to be attuned to and contained, and then we need to be able to make good repair. So attunement is just seeing somebody, seeing what's happening with them, recognizing what emotion they're experiencing. And then containment is simply being able to care for them in whatever we realize they're experiencing. So attunement and containment just really mean seeing somebody well, recognizing what they're going through, and caring for them well. But oftentimes we don't do that because we're human. And so we have to be able to make repair. Now, the really neat thing about attachment theory is that even though it's a theory grounded in evolution, I think it's a theory that we can get on board with, because even though they start from a different place, we know that we are people made for relationship because we bear God's image, and we bear the image of a triune God in community with the Godhead, and he made us to be in community with one another. And so we start at a different place in attachment theory, but we can arrive at both of us agreeing that we need to be in relationship with one another. So attachment theorists say that we don't have to attune and contain well 100% of the time. They actually say that if we can get it right about 50% of the time, we'll still be able to make a strong attachment, which feels really hopeful to me. The other thing is that when we don't make a good attachment, a strong attachment, we can seek repair, because rupture or brokenness in a relationship is unavoidable. So what is a good repair? What is it? How do we approach making a good repair? First, I would say we have to make sure that we have a posture of humility and teachability. And we do that by remembering who we are, our own brokenness, and by remembering the fact that we needed Christ to come to save us from that brokenness and reconcile us to God. And then we have to choose not to minimize, blame shift, qualify, or deny any of the wrongdoing that we've done. This sounds like, well, if you had, but I wasn't feeling very good, or maybe if you hadn't said. Those kinds of things are blame shifting or minimizing our responsibility in the relationship. So here's the hard thing about making a good repair, is that even if the other person has harmed you or sinned against you, we have to be able to take 100% of the responsibility for our part in the conflict. And that's hard when we've also been hurt. So let me just say, this is a hard saying, that I'm sorry you're upset is not making a good repair. It is not seeking forgiveness, and will ultimately not lead to reconciliation and true restoration in a relationship. I'm sorry you're upset is really a way of almost blaming the other person for what happened. So what we have to be willing to do when we have hurt someone is to be honest about the shame that's involved in talking about our own sin. We have to be honest with ourselves that this is a hard thing to talk about. And this could mean that you need to talk about that with a third party, a counselor or a trusted friend, and work through your own feelings of shame and your own desire to hide, or your other coping skills in relationship that make it hard for you to not only attune and contain well, but to seek repair when you don't. So when we're seeking repair, here's some tips to help make the repair a good repair, a sound repair, because a good repair can make a relationship even stronger than it was before the hurt or the conflict. One thing you want to do is ask your spouse, not just what did I do that hurt you, but how did what I did impact you? So I like to say, like, there is the offense, and then there are the shock waves that go out from the offense. That means that I might have said something hurtful and that I need to make repair over, but I also need to understand how what I said affected the person, how they carried it with them, what they began to tell themselves about it, how it began to affect the relationship, how it affected the way they began to see themselves and the way that they began to see me. That's really investigating not just the hurt that I caused, but the impact of the hurt that I caused. So we want to understand the impact. We also want to make sure in a repair that we make sure that we understand all the ways that we have wronged someone. And we want to be specific about the ways that we have wronged someone. Now, I want to mention this before I go through the template of how I think a good repair is made. I want to just say that if we're talking about deep betrayal, sexual sin, infidelity, deep betrayal in a marriage, it is going to take more than one repair. Oftentimes, deep betrayals will involve small repairs made over time because the betrayal itself involved many small ruptures over time. And I also want to say that when we make a repair, even when it's a good repair, we often have to give the person who we've harmed time to sit with that repair and to see our repentance in order for full restoration of the relationship to take place. So it's not our job as the offender to rush them to forgive us. Part of making the repair is giving them space to be able to process what we have owned and how we are going to change our behavior. Because you can see the implication of what I'm saying. In order to make a full repair, I believe we have to make a plan for how to be different in the future. And we have to not only communicate that with words, but even more importantly, we have to communicate that in repentance, in the not just the quality of our confession and our words, but by changes in behavior over time. This is a case where words are important, but they're not the most important thing. The repair does need to be made verbally. I believe that. But it also needs to be backed up with a change in behavior. So here's the template of what I think a good repair looks like. I think it has 3 parts, just to kind of make it something we can hold on to. Please forgive me for, and then we name that specifically. I realized it affected you or hurt you by, and that's where we name the impact. And I should have, and that's where we name what we plan to do in the future for repentance. So here's what it might sound like just with an everyday occurrence. I was really harsh with you last night. Please forgive me for being harsh with you. I realize it made you shut down and not share your heart with me. I definitely don't want to do that. I want to be more gentle so you can feel like you can open up to me with things you're struggling with. So you can hear, I was really harsh with you. Please forgive me for being harsh with you. Name the hurt and the offense. I realized it made you shut down and not share. That's naming the impact. I want to be more gentle with you. That's naming how I want to change my behavior in the future. So because I mentioned deep betrayal and because oftentimes, because of the nature of the one flesh relationship, betrayals do happen and they cut very deep and they are a different and deeper wound in the relationship than these everyday occurrences. An apology or a repair, a beginning of a repair, because there won't be just one, might sound something like this. I know one apology is not going to fix everything, but please forgive me for looking at these materials while you are sitting up with our sick child. I realize that this must make this whole thing even harder because while you were serving our family, I was seeking my own comfort. And I want to prove to you that I can sacrifice my comfort for your peace of mind. So I'm going to honor your request to put technology away after dinner. Okay, that's a lot. It's a lot for a podcast that you might be listening to while you're taking your afternoon stroll. But what I really want to emphasize here is the same elements are still involved, but in deep betrayals of infidelity or sexual misconduct, sexual sin, there are going to be a lot of small apologies that are necessary. And those small, and I don't mean small in terms of depth or scope, I mean a lot of apologies, not this one big that just blanketly covers everything. In those individual apologies, we still need to recognize and honor all the different ways the betrayal harmed the person and the ways that our spouse is experiencing the impact of that betrayal. And that's why it takes so long for betrayals to heal. The reason I say that is because I don't want us to think that we can slap a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. Or as my friend likes to say, we don't give $5 forgiveness for a $5,000 offense. And we don't give a $5 apology for a $5,000 offense. So I hope this is helpful to help you know the elements of making a good repair. We want to name the offense, we want to name the impact, and we want to name the way that we plan to change our behavior in the future. Just like our other tools, I created a worksheet that goes through these steps and also some discussion questions for you and your spouse to be able to talk through how good repair's been made in the past, how that affected you, and how you would like to be better about making repair. So often what happens is people who wind up in my office after 7, 10, 15 years of marriage is because good repairs were not made all the way along. It's not because there was harm done, because there's harm done in every relationship because of our brokenness. But it is because repair was not made well and effectively, and repentance wasn't planned for and carried out. So I encourage you to really dig deep, to be willing to make a good repair.